Today, in the world after coronavirus, with us is Kishore Mahbubani, founding Dean of the Kuan School of Public Policy in Singapore.
Whatever trends you saw in the past will only accelerate in the future because of technology, economic interdependence, and so on and so forth. I said in my book, The Great Convergence, that the 193 countries in the past used to be living on 193 separate boats with captains and crews taking care of each boat and rules to make sure the boats didn't collide. But as a result of rapid globalization, the 7.5 billion people of planet Earth no longer live in 193 separate boats. They live on 193 separate cabins on the same boat. But the problem with this global boat is that you have captains and crews taking care of each cabin and no captain or crew taking care of the global boat as a whole. And paradoxically, it's been proven correct by COVID-19 because it started from China went to East Asia, from East Asia went to Europe, from Europe went to United States in less than 2-3 months, right? So we are on the same boat. So we can't avoid it. And there's no way any country can detach itself from the boat anymore. The biggest mistake that the Western countries have been making has been to weaken institutions of global governance, when in fact we needed stronger institutions of global governance in response to being on the same boat. And the tragedy here is that the one critical institution of global governance that the West has weakened seriously has been the World Health Organization. So in the 1970s, about 70% of the budget of the WHO came from mandatory funded compulsory contributions. But the West pushed very hard to reduce the mandatory funding contribution from 70% to 18% to 18%. Now you cannot make long-term plans, recruit long-term health inspectors, scientists from voluntary contribution. So I hope that one of the consequences of COVID-19 is that the West will realize its mistake and go back towards strengthening these institutions of global governance.
What do you think is the likelihood with the current dispensation of the West, the US in particular, seeing the logic of cooperation?
I think it's important to make a distinction between the European perspective and the American perspective. Because, if you listen to President Macron or Chancellor Angela Merkel, they understand that in this small interdependent world, we have to strengthen multilateral institutions. But I'm hoping that as people reflect deeper on the lessons of COVID-19, they will come to the obvious and logical conclusion that it's been a mistake to weaken multilateral organizations. Actually, it will be in the interest of the United States. In my book, Has China Won, which is about US-China relations, the major US-China geopolitical contest is paradoxically both inevitable and avoidable. And it is inevitable because there's a 2,000, 3,000 year logic of world history. Americans find it difficult to accept a world in which they'll no longer be number one. And so they're making a major effort to try and suppress the rise of China. But I believe that the Americans are making a big strategic mistake. It's not just me who believes it, because Henry Kissinger also believes it and saying that was a big mistake for the United States to launch a geopolitical contest against China without first working on a long-term strategy of how you deal with China.
If you were advising the US president today, what is the one thing you would ask him to do? And similarly, if you were advising the Chinese leadership?
If I was advising President Trump, the smartest thing he could do is to work with China very, very fast to quickly curb the spread of COVID-19, and equally importantly, remove all the tariffs on China and allow the world economy to bounce back very fast. And in the case of Xi Jinping, this is the time for China to be super generous towards the rest of the world, because as you know, you remember the people who helped you, not when you were up and successful, but when you were down and struggling.